Happens to women and men.
He asked me if I like being tied up.
But some say claiming harassment is an easy way for power-hungry workers to get ahead.
So if you're a huggy, touchy kind of person, which I am, I'm going to get my butt suit up. Sexual harassment, who's the real victim? If you've seen the hit movie Disclosure, you know it deals with the subject of sexual harassment in the workplace. Only this time it's a lady boss, played by Demi Moore, who's the aggressor, and Michael Douglas is her male victim. Now, this film has people talking in every workplace across the country. And with harassment laws getting stricter and gender roles reversing in the workplace, the question is, who's the real victim when it comes to sexual harassment? Meet Fred. He was fired from his job because he says a jealous female employee set him up as a sexual harasser, just because he promoted another woman instead of her. He admits it looked bad that he interviewed her poolside in his shorts, but says nobody ever listened to his side of the story. Fred says it's unfair that the sympathy always goes with the one who cries sexual harassment. My next guest couldn't disagree more. Meet Julie. Julie says her boss once threw her on the floor and tried to rip her clothes off. She claims that being the victim of sexual harassment cost her a job as well as her dignity and self-esteem. She says stricter laws are needed to protect helpless victims like herself. Later, you'll hear from a woman found guilty of rubbing her breasts against men and women at her workplace. And you'll also hear from a man whose sexual harasser was another man. Our jury selected from today's studio audience will listen to these stories and others and decide, when it comes to sexual harassment, who's the real victim? Later, you'll get a chance to vote and tell us what you think. Now, Fred, you feel you were set up by a disgruntled female employee. Tell me what happened.
Well, originally I was promoted and transferred halfway across the country to train, hire, and recruit employees for a new operation. And while we were getting up and going during our training session, one of the female employees was jealous and claimed favoritism because another employee that was my right-hand person and was very capable operationally, she was afraid she was going to get the promotion that...
Well, I can understand claiming jealousy.
Right.
I don't understand sexual harassment.
Well,
how did that happen?
She used many little things and turned them around, small facts that were in no way harassment, and used them to her advantage. So the employer...
Like what? Let's get specific.
For instance, at the poolside interview, she was the last person I hired and was recommended to be hired by my assistant manager. I had interviewed her 3 times on the phone. I had worked 70 hours that week, and training started the next day. And I told her to meet me at the resort where I was staying, which is the finest restaurant in the area. And I would talk to her at that time. So I showed up in my tennis shorts and a blue jean shirt with my legal pad.
And where did you interview her?
Poolside at an umbrella table.
Full of witnesses?
Yes.
Waiters, everything? But she said that you invited her up to her room, didn't she?
I found out later that she said for a whole week I was asking her to stay with me every night, when in fact she was having to commute 2 hours each way, and I suggested to her if there is anything I can do, if her plans fell through because her girlfriend apparently could not put her up, I would make arrangements for her to stay with another corporate and female employee that was coming down from our main office.
You know, that's one incident. It doesn't seem that would do it to go over the edge and be deemed sexual harassment. What else happened to you?
One of the hardest things was she was co-conspiring with the assistant manager, because they knew that if they could keep saying all these bad things about me, that I would be fired, he'd get manager, and he could automatically promote her to assistant manager.
So what else do they accuse you of doing, Fred?
The company won't release it.
So you don't even know?
No. In fact, it took me 6 weeks after my termination to find out why I was fired. They wouldn't even tell me when I was fired.
Now, in this day and age, and speaking as a lawyer, the first thing I would do is, how come you're not suing their butts off? Well, for discrimination, for illegal firing.
I have filed a discrimination suit with the state, but the problem is with most of us have at-will contracts with employers, and that means the employer can fire you for any reason and you can leave for any reason. So I have to sue them for malicious slander.
How about the incident where she claimed she caught you with your arm around another female employee?
Mm-hmm.
What happened there?
By the way, I was confronted with all of these accusations, and I told the truth on all of it. What had happened was I had a female employee, which happened to be the one she was very jealous of, was having marital problems, was very unfocused at work. She was crying in the back room. I had befriended her along with other employees, and she was very upset. I put my arm around her and I kissed her in the hair. Now, what's so bad about this is I agree, those actions are not should not take place in the workplace, and I am very professional. But they never asked that female employee how she felt about it or if it took place.
Your lawyer told you not to fight this, didn't he?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, he said it would just take a lot of time and a lot of money. If I got a judgment against her, she was 19, so there's nothing to go after her for except the judgment. Then I'd have to go after the company, which is a Fortune 500 company.
Julie, you have a case of real sexual harassment, in your opinion. What happened to you?
Well, the company that I worked for Mission Hills Mortgage, and they mentally and physically harassed me, and it was on a daily basis.
Well, somebody did, not the company.
My boss, actually, they used my children as tools against me.
What do you mean by that?
Well, my boss came to me after about 8 months of employment there and told me that he had an agenda and that I was part of this family and that there was no way out for me. He told me that if I didn't cooperate with him, that he would do everything in his power to make sure that I was ruined, and that if anybody was ever to go down, he wanted me to be his mistress. And he told me he had done this before.
He said blatantly, he said outright,
yes,
you're going to be my mistress, and if you don't, I'm going to ruin your life.
If you don't cooperate, not only will you lose your job, but I know people in higher places, and
What did you do with that information, Julie?
I was scared. I was really, really scared because, yes, like he told me, he said, Julie, you need your job, your children need their medical benefits, and if you ever think that you want to talk to somebody about this, all you have to do is look at your children. So he would say this to me on a daily basis. In fact, he would say it in front of the office. He was very rude, very... He yelled at people all the time. He had everybody in the office running scared.
People heard him say stuff like this to you?
Oh, yes. He took me out to lunch one day with a bunch of people, and he said it right there in front of our whole Fresno branch.
In this day and age, that could happen.
Well, it did. One night, he came into my office one day. He said to me, Julie, I would do anything just to hear you. And he told me that if I said anything to anybody, I would lose my job. If I contacted, he would just tell everybody that we had an affair, and he would make it to where that I was the one that looked bad. And he told me that he would make it very hard for me to find another job, which in fact it was very, very hard for me to find another job.
Now, there was one incident where he actually came in your office and threw you on the floor, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He did. He came into my office one night, and he threw me on the floor. He put his hand over my mouth, and he told me to shut up, and that he was in total control of the situation. I said that somebody walked through the back door. He then called me a bitch. The next Monday morning when I came to work, he told me, he said, I need to reiterate this with you. He'd come into my office, he'd close the blinds, and he said, I just want to reiterate with you. I want you to know that you cannot talk to anybody. If you talk to who's the owner, if you let him know anything, he is going to believe me because I have him eating out of the palms of my hand.
Did you ever give in?
No, absolutely
not. And
not.
what happened to you?
No. Well, what happened was one day he came into my office and he was saying a whole bunch of rude things to me, remarks to me. And I started crying. I was really upset. And another lady was going to she walked into my office and he made her stay out. He said no. He literally stood outside the door and would not let anybody in to see if I was okay. He walked in, he came back into the office and he said, I'm here to give you a raise, but you haven't been cooperating with me, so you're not going to receive your raise. He said, as he sat there and talked to me, he said, excuse me for scratching my right now, but I just can't help myself. And I looked at him and I said, you know, you're despicable, and I don't really need to listen to
I
this.
assume you've left the job.
Oh, of course I did.
Right.
I did, yes.
We've got to take a break.
Okay.
And Julie, I can see the tears in your eyes, and for those of us or anybody out there who doesn't believe this really happens, all I have to do is listen to your story, and we'll hear more of that when we come back. Next, you'll hear what this woman was accused of doing to both men and women in her office, and you'll find out what this man was asked to do by his male boss that made him cry underneath his desk. We'll be right back.
was a victim of sexual harassment, and as educated and intelligent as I think I am, I was scared by it.
You can seek legal recourse. I think the thing is to do something and to talk about it.
Today, judge for yourself sexual harassment. Who's the real victim? Meet Sandy. She was accused by both men and women at her workplace of sexual harassment. They claim she rubbed her breasts up against them, gave them unsolicited massages, and asked some of them to spend the night at her house, neglecting to tell them that she had only one bed. Meet James Brown. At first, he thought his male boss was just being a bit heavy-handed with the compliments and personal questions, until one day when he was asked if he liked oral sex. From that point on, James says his boss was on a non-stop power trip for sexual favors. And meet James' attorney, Paul Watman. He says while there's no law against the boss having an interest in an employee, no clearly means no. And that's where the law steps in. Sandy, I don't think I've ever met anybody who's been accused of sexually harassing both men and women. How did that happen to you?
I am a whistleblower for a state agency. For about a year, I was going up the chain of command with malfeasance and fraud. They had to get rid of me, is all I have to say. So there you are, sexual harassment charge. So tell me about rubbing your breasts up against men and women. Did that ever happen? I've never done that. That's just an outright lie. Outright lie. So how were you, I understand not only you were charged, you were actually convicted of this, weren't you, in court? No, this was not a court. This was another state agency. And later found out that that was wrong, and I got my job back. I don't understand. What was wrong? What they stated, that I was really the one that's being harassed, not the one that did the harassing. Okay, but you're saying you never rubbed your breasts up against anybody? No, I have never done that. How about putting your arms around people? Did you do that? I have done that coming out of church, but I don't do that. I'm a huggy kind of a person, but I use Hun, Babe, and Doll. I come from Miami, and they all use it. But a state agency did find you guilty of harassment. Is that not true? Yes. So how is that possible if there was nothing there? It was hearsay. The laws have to be changed to correct that. So what they did is there was no witnesses. No witnesses. It was just someone's word. You know, there were 5 men and 3 women testifying against you. That's right. All 8 were lying. Yes, they were, because they were promised jobs. Paul, you're an attorney. How often does something like this happen?
It happens much less frequently than an actual sexual harassment occurs. The real problem that sexual harassment laws are meant to address is people being treated in the workplace by whether they'll have sex or not, rather than on their job performance. And that's what has to stop, and that's why we have sexual harassment laws. Because people have been trained, men especially have been trained in this society, to treat other people as objects. And they've been doing this for a long time, and it's only with the revolution in gender roles in the last 25 years that people have started saying, this has to stop. I'm not going to be treated as an object. I want to be treated as a person, and I don't have to have sex in order to have a job and to keep my family alive and taken care of.
Sandy, did you ever ask a woman to your home? I asked everybody to my home. To spend the night? The young lady was invited to my home because she had a fight with her boyfriend, and I told her she'd come down tonight, she could go to sleep, and I'll take her back in the morning. Where was she going to sleep? If they check the tax rolls, I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house to which I brought pictures to the court. So it really was all made up as far as you're concerned? Yes. James, what happened to you?
Well, after about 4 months on the job at Hoffman International in Oakland, California, the president of the company came to me and started making comments about that I was an attractive guy. He had me turn around and would look at me and tell me that my pants weren't tight enough and say that I should wear tighter pants next time. He started wanting to hug me when I got to work, and he wanted me to come to his office and hug him.
What did you do when he wanted to hug you?
I told him no, I wasn't going to do it. And he said that I was uptight and that, you know, if you're going to work at this company, you're going to have to hug me. And then he started asking me if I like getting he asked me
Did you report this to the personnel office? Did you report this to anybody?
No, at first I just thought he was a jerk, and I didn't, you know, I didn't think anything would really happen. And I mean, the guy was 69 years old, so you know, it's just.
Yeah, but was it obvious to you? Wasn't it obvious that this was a pure? He was hitting up on you sexually. This man wanted sex with you.
Yeah, and it just kept on getting worse. He asked me if I was into man-boy sex. He asked me if I liked being tied up and S&M sex.
Okay. Were you intimidated by this man, by the way? Were you frightened of your job?
Yeah, I was really intimidated. It was the president of the company. I'd only been out of college for a short time, and it was my first professional level job. There were a lot of opportunities. It was just a great job, and I really wanted it.
So what did you end up doing?
Well, things progressed to the point where he wanted me to move in with him and become his lover.
Oh.
He wanted me to travel with him. And at first he made the offers and said, if you want to do this, I'll give you the raise of the promotion. And I said no. And then he said, you have to have sex with me if you want to keep your job.
What did you end up doing?
I quit.
You quit?
Yeah.
And I assume you filed legal action against the company. All right. All right.
Yeah, I have a question. What's that lady's name in the middle right there?
Julie.
Julie, I don't know. Something about your story to me seems fake because as we were sitting on a break...
Are you serious?
Yeah, seriously. You're laughing.
I believed every word of her story.
How can you believe that when she's laughing?
Well, she's laughing
She's
now.
laughing during the break.
Wait a second.
And then she's crying. Something don't seem right.
Why not? What was it about her story you didn't believe?
I'm just the way she was showing me after we were sitting on the break. She's laughing, but then she's crying. I mean, if you're sad, be sad. You know,
I see.
Don't be sad.
Okay, that's it. All right. So the fact is, if I go over there and during a break, I crack a joke to try to make her feel better, and she laughs at it.
I'm going to be sad.
Okay.
Your joke's not going to make me happy.
All right, thank you. When we come back, you'll hear why this attorney says it's harder to cry victim if you're a man, and you'll also find out why this woman says the film Disclosure is giving women a bad rap in the workplace. We'll be right back.
On the next Judge for Yourself.
Can you go too far to save money?
This is a 1979 shirt.
Judge for Yourself.
All right, Judge for Yourself. Sexual harassment, who's the real victim? Meet Tammy Bruce, president of the LA chapter of NOW, the National Organization for Women. NOW recently came out to publicly denounce the hit movie Disclosure. They say it preys on the unfounded fear that as women become more powerful in the workplace, they'll use sex as a power tool over men, just as men use it now. Attorney Miles Berman disagrees. He says sexual harassment is an issue of power, pure and simple, and women will learn to abuse it just as men do. And meet attorney Rick Albert. He defends employers against employees who cry sexual harassment. Rick says that some claims are exaggerated, may come from employees with poor performance records who want insurance against getting fired. Tammy, what is your problem with the film Disclosure?
Well, it essentially shows us, first of all, how low Hollywood is willing to go to really cast a shadow on sexual harassment. It is not just about a gender switch in the sense of who's the harasser. It is for the two women who accuse another person of harassment in the film, they're either manipulative liars or too timid to know that the offending behavior was just a misunderstanding. Those are the two stereotypes about sexual harassment. The problem with Disclosure is that it sends a very strong message that women are not to be trusted, that this issue as a whole, frankly, your show is an example of what can happen with one film. Your question about who the real victim is prompted by that kind of film.
Tammy, why isn't it possible, and in some cases, maybe not the majority of the cases, Tammy, but why isn't it possible to have a Demi Moore character? Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you something. Our show, our producers know of someone, a woman who did exactly that.
I can't take away from what Fred's experience was or from any other story on this panel except to say that the anomaly cannot change the nature of a debate to say that that's the majority of the experiences. Fred may very well have had a very bad experience. People abuse the laws all the time. Women are not always angels on the job. But Julie's experience should have gotten the same kind of reaction as that young man's experience did, because it's as bad, it is as wrong, and it is 95.5% of the sexual harassment experiences. If Hollywood is going to look at this issue, I challenge them to look at it in every way, not in the way that the industry itself has the most problem with sexual harassment and a glass ceiling. Maybe it shouldn't surprise us that they have an agenda with this film.
Miles, you say women will use this just like men do, as a power play. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, sexual harassment is an issue of power play.